Hello and welcome to stage 5 of the World Championship 2026 in Through the Ages. Out of originally more than 1,100 players, there are now only 112 left, so only about 10% of the players are left. All the rest is eliminated, meaning that those players who made it that far certainly have proven their skills. And in that stage, we have 4 upper bracket groups left and 24 lower bracket groups. And as you maybe remember, in the last stage, in stage 4, I sadly in the upper bracket finished only at the second position, 1 point behind E-Rock. And with that, I got sent to the lower bracket, meaning that from now on I have to always win my group to make it to the next stage. As soon as I at some point should not be able to win my group, I'm immediately eliminated. So now, of course, yeah, I have to really make sure to get some good results going. Because in the last year's World Championship, I already got eliminated in stage 5, which I wasn't too happy about. And so this year I had a goal to again make it further into the tournament. But in order to achieve that, I have to win my group. And what my group is, what player it consists of, we are going to take a look at now. Alright, and as you can see in the lower 2022 group that I'm playing in, my opponents are Brightfuture, Malakesh and Kharny. And I will quickly introduce them to you. Brightfuture had, in a sense, a little bit of a sad run so far in this tournament. He was seeded into stage 3, so didn't have to play the first 2 stages, and then he immediately got into a group where a timeout was happening. So um, a lot of the games were cancelled, and then he finished at the 3rd position with 12 points. But it's of course always not great playing a group with a timeout. That means he in stage 4 had to play in the lower bracket, and unfortunately again there was a player who timed out. At least at this point, Wolves, the organizer of the tournament, made a change that in case a player times out in the first 2 4-player games, then at least there will be more 3-player games played than just the one between the remaining left 3 players. That's also how it went in my last stage. So at least then he was able to play 7 games, and he also very convincingly managed to win his group with 30 points. And with that win, he made it into stage 5. In the current international championship season, he is playing in the gold division. In the last intermezzo championship season, he even played in the platinum division. However, he finished at the 5th position, so next season he will be playing in gold again. And in the last year's world championship, he made it into stage 5, and it was actually quite close because he tied with the first position in stage 5, so only 1 point more, and he actually would have made it into stage 6, which I think is quite a strong achievement. And with that, he has already proven that he can have a nice world championship run. And yeah, so let's see how it will go for him this time. Then we have Malakesh. Malakesh was seeded into stage 2, and in stage 2 he also very convincingly managed to win his group with 39 points, meaning he managed to win all of his games. Then in stage 3 he again managed to win his group, this time with 27 points. In stage 4 he was still in the upper bracket, and there he finished with 13 points on the 4th position. However, he also was seeded into a very strong group consisting of Grotz and Arne, 2 players of the top 10 of the click rating, so that was quite a tough drawing for him. And Zadok was the last player in that group, so no shame in finishing 4th in that group, and at least he still managed to score some points. And with that, he got sent into the lower bracket and is now playing in my group in stage 5. In this current international championship season, he's playing in the gold division. In the last intermezzo championship, he also played in the gold division. However, there things didn't go that well for him, and he got relegated into silver. And in the last year's World Championship, he made it to stage 4. And I also remember that in the Wimbledon tournament, the last one, he had a relatively nice run. I don't remember exactly how far he made it, but I think he was among the top 20, maybe even among the top 10 or something. So there he has maybe proven his 2-player skills. And then we have the last player, Kharny. Kharny had to play already in stage 1, so wasn't seeded. in stage 1, there he also had to experience a timeout, so not that many games were played. However, the games that were played, he all managed to win, and with that got into the upper bracket of stage 2. There he finished second with 22 points, but it was a three-way tie actually, with 3 players finishing at 22 points. So that was extremely close, and he easily could have maybe also made it to the upper bracket of stage 3, but with only finishing second, he then went to the lower bracket of stage 3, where he managed to win his group with 26 points. And then in stage 4, he of course again played in the lower bracket, and there he actually finished only second with 25 points. Now you of course might wonder, why is he now playing still in this World Championship? He should have gotten eliminated, but because I think 2 players dropped from the World Championship. The 2 best second places of the lower bracket of stage 4 also got advanced, and Kharny was actually one of those 2 best second places. He finished with 25 points, and with that he is still playing in stage 5 of this World Championship, so that is now quite a nice achievement. He is a player who is not participating in the International and Intermezzo Championship at the moment, so we don't know in which division he would be there, but he already participated in the last year's World Championship, where he made it to stage 3. Alright, and now that I've introduced the players to you, we will also take a quick look at their clicker rating. The rating actually got updated very recently, and as you can see, I'm at the 6th position at the moment, so I'm the position that I'm quite happy about. Also, my rating went up quite a bit compared to the last rating update, so I have been able to make some improvements in the clicker rating, being at the 6th position now. Brightfuture is the highest rated among my opponents, being at the 77th position in the rating. Malakesh is 50 rating points, conservative rating points behind him, at the 143rd position, and Kharny is at the 187th position. So here is at the lowest rated opponent, however, only according to the conservative rating. According to the estimated rating, he is actually ahead of Malakesh, so maybe he hasn't played that many games yet, and with that, the Clico rating has some higher uncertainty for him, meaning in the conservative rating he is behind Malakesh, but according to the estimated rating he might actually be better, but that we maybe will find out during that stage. And let's maybe also take a quick look at if we maybe have a specialist among those players, in maybe being especially strong in one of the player counts, and we can see that that might indeed be the case, because in 2-player ratings, first of all, I'm still in the top spot, but I actually lost some points in the 2-player rating. Brightfuture is at the 26th and Malakesh at the 65th position, so both of them may be especially strong in 2-player games, while Kharny is a bit more behind, so 2 players maybe doesn't seem to be his strong suit. Then we have the 3-player ratings, where both Brightfuture and Malakesh are a bit more behind. Kharny is a bit more behind as well. And then the 4-player ratings, where Kharny is also a bit more behind. I think he might be more behind in all of the ratings here compared to the overall ratings, because there are just even fewer games played of that one particular player count, meaning there's an even higher uncertainty. So we maybe should have taken a look at the estimated rating for him. But at the 4-player rating, Brightfuture is a bit better, so maybe 3-player games are a bit of his weak spot. Malakesh seems to be the strongest in 2-player games, also maybe being proven in his good Wimbledon run, and Kharny seems to be maybe better in 3 and 4-player games than in 2-player games, where his estimated rating is a bit lower. Alright, with that we have finished the introduction of my opponents, and we can now take a look at the first one of the 4-player games. Alright, I'm playing in the 3rd position in this game, and first of all we can take a look at the leaders and wonders. We have quite some theater synergy in H3 with Marlene Dietrich, Chaplin, Fleming, and the Hollywood, so going into that direction can work out well, especially because there's also Bach and Anthony Gaudi in H2. We also have some lab synergy with Einstein, Bill Gates, and Steve Jobs, but there's no spaceflight, but at least the Manhattan Project. We then have Mandela, we have no Pierre, we have no Internet, we have no Red Cross, we have no Gandhi. There is the Suez Canal and Cook in H2, so some colonization payoff. There's Maria Theresa, but no ocean liner service. James Watt and the railroad, also Newton and the railroad. If you have watched my last video about underrated leader and wonder combination, you maybe know why I'm talking about this now, because I think it's also a nice combination potentially. Nobel is there, so the two science leaders, and yeah. In H1 we have St. Peter's Basilica but no Forbidden City, the Great Wall but no Meiji Castle, Universitas but no Silk Road. We have the two military action leaders in H1, no military action leader in H2. We have Columbus for maybe preparing for the Suez Canal, but apart from him, not the strongest colonization leaders. We have both Gutenberg and Leonardo, and then Genghis Khan to help with the strength, as well as Saladin as a very solid leader. Kharny is in the first position. He interestingly picks Hippocrates. I probably would have rather gone for Boudica or Pyramids here, but maybe he values Hippocrates especially highly. That means that Malakesh, I think, gets quite a strong start now, being able to take both Boudica and the Pyramids, so getting a very strong wonder and a very strong leader, so a good start for him. And then, of course, I have to think about what I want to go for now. And there could be a relatively easy solution about with going for Hammurabi. And that's definitely something to consider. Hammurabi is just a very strong leader. There is maybe a chance that Brightfuture could go for Caesar, but he has just some strong alternatives. For example, if I go for Hammurabi, could go for Stonehenge plus the engineering genius, or for Stonehenge plus Aristotle. So maybe he values Caesar highly. He would get a rich land in addition to a leader and a wonder, so it could be reasonable. But even if he would take Caesar, would be playing behind me, so I don't think I have to expect a lot of pressure, unless of course maybe the Colossus is revealed and one of the players goes for the Colossus. But if I go for Hammurabi, then maybe I also have a chance to take the Colossus in case I think it's necessary. So taking Hammurabi here is certainly something to consider. The wonders that, apart from the Colossus, could come out of the deck are Roman Roads and Acropolis. So Acropolis, Colossus, both wouldn't be too great. Colossus, of course, fine with some colonization payoff later on, but and maybe helps to protect myself with Hammurabi, but I don't like the combination too much. But the Roman Roads would be a very strong wonder to get. At the end, I actually decided to instead go for just Stonehenge and Richland, interestingly. And there are some reasons for it. First of all, I then expected that Brightfuture likely will go for Hammurabi, and that means that with Kharny and Malakesh also already having committed to a leader, I would then get Aristotle, and I do think Aristotle plus Stonehenge can be a fine combination, especially if I get a bit lucky and get either an early monarchy or a code of laws. And I get the wonder plus the rich land, so I get a bit of an additional value out of the yellow card. And while I leave Hammurabi to Brightfuture, I still think maybe I make his pick a little bit worse because while he can go for Hammurabi, there is no card left on the one civil action area, meaning he can just take Hammurabi, no yellow card, while, for example, if I take Hammurabi myself, then he could go for Stonehenge plus engineering genius, probably would then get Aristotle at his next turn, which I think would be quite a strong start for him. Of course, that's not the biggest reason, a 4-player game, but still, I felt like his choice maybe gets a little bit worse when I go for Stonehenge and Richland. I think just taking Hammurabi here would also be perfectly fine, but at the end I went for Stonehenge Richland, getting the yellow card, still getting a strong leader with Aristotle, and maybe leaving a slightly worse combination available for Brightfuture, who indeed will just go for Hammurabi without any additional card, which I think is probably also the correct choice for him. Now H1 starts, Kharny decides to go for elects Hippocrates, takes the engineering genius for 2 civil actions. It's a bit costly, but sometimes can be worth it, and then he also builds the mine. Malakesh goes for Boudica, increases population, builds a mine, takes the frugality, so that's also a very straightforward turn, and my turn will also end up being straightforward. I will go for Aristotle, elect him, build a mine, increase my population. I definitely like him more than Alex. There would be Saladin, maybe is a good early replacement for Alex, but I just like Aristotle quite a bit more, and then I think the turn is quite straightforward. I draw 2 cards. The developed territory is an interesting draw because there is Columbus in the game and Aristotle is a nice leader to maybe keep a bit longer. There is a Suez Canal in the game, James Cook in the game, so if I should get my hands on Columbus, that could be quite strong. Bright Future elects Hammurabi, builds a mine, takes the Engineering Genius 1, and then interestingly the Colossus over the Rome Roads, an interesting choice, but now that he has already the Engineering Genius 1, of course that means that he can use that yellow card for even more resources compared to when you would use it in the Rome Roads. And there's some colonization payoff. He's playing in last position as Hammurabi, so I do think there are some good arguments for it. However, I think the Rome Roads and finishing them quickly, even though he maybe would need to use the Engineering Genius 1 for 2 civil actions, also would have been quite strong. But I do think it's very reasonable to go for the Colossus here. I do think that Kharny, though, might be quite happy about getting the Rome Roads. He has the Engineering Genius A and can finish that wonder quite quickly. Interestingly, though, he is not building the second lab. I think with having the Engineering Genius, it would have been strong to build the second lab and then already finish the Rome Roads at the next turn, getting the production going very quickly, but he is willing to delay the second lab here. Malakesh seeds an event, the development of markets are revealed. With that, he is actually able, with also taking a resource from Boudica, to finish the pyramids already, getting the 5th civil action very early, and then he takes the irrigation for 2 civil actions. And at my turn then, I decided to take one of those early irons for 2 civil actions. I have a lot of additional signs with Aristotle and Stonehenge, which I think is a great situation to invest into the iron and get some quick resource production going. After taking the iron, I have to get out of corruption, and I will do that by building the second lab. And then I have 1 civil action left, and that civil action was a little bit tricky, because there are some cards that I could take from the 1 civil action area, and I was especially thinking about the Bread and Circuses, because with Aristotle, of course, I would also be scoring as science if I should take this card. But the thing is, I have already a happy face from the Stonehenge, and with that, the Bread and Circuses, it can just be better to maybe wait for an H2 happy face solution. If you have already a happy face from the Stonehenge, that's a lot more doable. There's no Pierre in the game, there's no Darwin in the game. I think it's not a strong arena games. I think Bread and Circuses on their own are really not the strongest cards to have. And also, I will go into early iron. I will have a lot of production, but 3 of the H1 wonders will already be gone, and there will only be 2 left, Universitas and St. Peter's Basilica. And ideally, I would like to get one of those wonders to invest at the early production that I likely will be getting, and then there's a decent chance maybe that I will end up getting the St. Peter's Basilica, in which case I also don't need the happy faces from the Bread and Circuses as well. So while at the beginning it felt fine to just take the Bread and Circuses, score science with Aristotle, I at the end was very, very skeptical if I should really invest the civil action into that. The thing is now, what should I do if I don't take the Bread and Circuses? I could of course just build a step of the Stonehenge, but there are some drawbacks to it, because that would mean that in the next turn I have, instead of 6, only 5 resources, meaning instead of going for 2 iron upgrades, I can only go for 1 iron upgrade. If I don't get any additional resources from the development. So that felt a bit awkward, but at least it would be an efficient use of my civil actions. And of course I could also increase my population, being prepared for free religion, and but then I would go very early into consumption. It was a close call. At the end I just decided to build a step of the Stonehenge, but also increasing my population maybe could be fine, especially it's a bit awkward now being at 5 instead of 6 resources, so I'm not sure if I should maybe just increase my population, but it would cost me immediately a food, so maybe at the next turn I miss out on a resource from not getting iron upgraded, but at least I get a food, and if there are some additional resources revealed, maybe I can still go for 2 iron upgrades. I draw 2 cards, the Pestilence and the Historic Territory. Bright Future will finish the Colossus and then, interestingly, goes for the Great Wall, increases his population to get out of corruption, and he will now have the Colossus plus the Great Wall, which of course at some point will have quite some military potential. For the moment he's Hammurabi, which makes him less threatening, but long term he could actually be quite the military threat. Interestingly, decides to take the Great Wall over something like iron, for example, is willing to delay the second lab, so he is doing some investments to go into that kind of setup. Kharny this turn finishes the Rome Roads, takes the iron, but is missing one science to develop it at the next turn, but he could of course get help from the developments. Malakesh takes the alchemy, can develop it, upgrade it, and maybe at a later point build an alchemy lab directly to save a civil action. He takes the swordsman, having a military tech available, and the urban growth, so the next turn if he maybe has the chance to get a resource from Boudica, he can even build the second alchemy already. Now it's my turn, and I want to get my iron production going as early as possible. And yeah, there were no additional resources revealed, meaning that I can only go for one upgrade. After that, in order to get out of corruption, I have to increase my population, and then I have one civil action left. And I was really considering Columbus here, because as I said, there's some colonization synergy with the Suez Canal and James Cook. I have now already 2 colonies in hand, so I have some backup colonies, but there's always the chance that I will draw an even better colony. I could keep Columbus in hand for a while, and then at the end of H1 elect him, and I think it would be very decent. And maybe I should also go for Columbus, but at the end there was a reason why I went for something different. And that reason again has to do about 3 H1 wonders already being discarded. Because I will now get into early iron, I will have some strong production, and with having that strong production I need things to invest into. And with only 2 H1 wonders being left, and maybe the H2 wonders not being the greatest ones, especially if I get no colony, the Suez Canal is then not that great, Eiffel Tower, Louvre, Kremlin, only the railroad is just in almost all of the cases a very strong wonder. So if I don't get an H1 wonder and not the strongest H1 wonders are revealed, I could maybe struggle to invest my resources. And the copy of Alchemy that is in the row is already the second one, so if I then don't take it now, there's definitely the danger that I don't get a chance to take another copy of Alchemy, and then I would be very dependent on the drop of those H1 wonders. And at the end, it felt a little bit critical to me, and because of that, I at the end went for the alchemy. Maybe I should still go for Columbus, but there's some other interesting leaders. With the alchemy, I can now go for Leonardo, maybe also for Gutenberg. There's Shishka, Joan of Arc, Saladin. So I was at the end thinking I should still be able to get a strong leader, and it just makes it that I hopefully will be able to always have something nice to invest my resources into. And of course, I also score science with Aristotle. I still keep both of my colonies and draw 2 aggressions. Brightfuture builds the second lab, increases his population. He will go for Columbus, and I mean he has the Colossus, so that gives him quite a big potential. If he gets lucky and draws an H2 colony, he also takes the monarchy and maybe can do a revolution at the next turn. Kharny builds the second lab finally, has to wait one more turn until he can go for the iron, increases his population twice, gets out of corruption like that, and then takes the second copy of irrigation. Malakesh can indeed take a resource from Boudica, builds the second lab, increases his population with the frugality to get out of corruption, takes the breakthrough for one civil action, increases his population again, and then takes the frugality. So I think a very decent turn, and generally I think quite a strong start for him. Boudica plus pyramids, already 2 alchemies going, some yellow cards in hand. I think, no, so far he had quite a strong start. At my turn, I will take the Code of Law, scoring another science with Aristotle, and soon being able to go for more civil actions. I will have a lot of science to invest into with the Stonehenge, so I think the Code of Laws is just quite a strong and important technology for me, which is why I'm willing to pay 2 civil actions here. Then I have 2 civil actions left. I need to get out of corruption, and at the end it was a relatively straightforward turn. After taking the Code of Laws, I will just go for 2 iron upgrades, making it that I'm now at 6 resource production, which is quite strong. And the next turn I can maybe either go for the alchemy or finish the Stonehenge, and then I think my position should also be decent. There's Leonardo and Gutenberg coming down the row, so those leaders could maybe be an option at my next turn. Maybe I draw a tactic, and Jan Shishka could be an option as well. So let's see what if I should end up going for one of those leaders at the next turn. I draw 2 cards. I draw Medieval Army Tactic, so that could potentially be interesting with Jan Shishka. With no events being revealed, Brightfuture can do revolution and can then get out of corruption by increasing his population. Going for such an early monarchy revolution with Hammurabi I think is quite strong. Kharny has already collected 3 of his Hippocrates tokens, and after the development of crafts are revealed, he will now go for Leonardo. A bit of an interesting call, because he has neither alchemy nor printing press, but at least he gets a bit of value out of him immediately, scores an additional resource when developing the irrigation. But 2 alchemies are already gone, so there's certainly a chance that the third one might be taken away, especially because the player without the alchemy is actually Brightfuture, who is playing right in front of him. And there's actually also only 1 printing press left in the game. So it's a bit risky to go for Leonardo. With going for the irrigation first, at least maybe Kharny is in a position to actually put some additional population into printing press, and also with having the additional Hippocrates tokens. So it might very well end up being fine, but there's maybe a little bit of risk attached to it. And he will go for those irrigation upgrades and then build a warrior. Alright, Malakesh will go for the iron, so after going for the alchemy he will now go for the iron, goes for an upgrade, takes the cartography, maybe he has already drawn or seeded some colonies, builds a warrior for free with Boudica's resources. And now it's my turn. I developed the Code of Laws, and yeah, I have to decide now whether I want to go for leader. Jan Žižka is in a row. But if I go for Žižka, I also really want to make sure to be able to use this tactic, but taking both Jan Žižka and Knights is just a bit expensive. Of course, I could just take Jan Žižka, hoping that I will get the Knights, but it's a bit risky, and I would have to pay 2 civil actions for him. And there's another leader available for 1 civil action, who I think in this position has quite some potential. And with that, and with not knowing when other leaders will be available, I decided to go for Gutenberg here, as I can maybe start at this turn with developing the alchemy, and then hopefully at the following turns just go for 2 upgrades, and then I use him also a bit as a transitional leader, hoping that in H2 I maybe soon will be able to go for replacement, and at least with having the alchemy, both Newton and Nobel would be nice early replacement leaders, so I might have maybe a decent chance at least to get an early replacement for Gutenberg. So after developing the Code of Laws, I will take Gutenberg, I will elect him, so Aristotle at the end gave me 3 signs, not the greatest Aristotle by any means, but 3 signs in the early game can still make a difference. And then after electing Gutenberg, I will build a Step of the Stonehenge. That allows me to develop the alchemy, and ideally I would have just liked to finish the Stonehenge here. The problem is that I then would have had 3 resources and 4 food lying around, which is not enough to get out of corruption. I could finish the Stonehenge and then build a warrior. However, then I don't have a free population for a potential free religion or free warrior, and with that, instead of finishing the Stonehenge, I increased my population and build a warrior to get out of corruption, and then I build another Step of the Stonehenge. It's a bit risky, that line, because I don't take the Knights, but taking them was just a bit expensive here. Brightfuture at least has the Great Wall, has a lot of resources to spend, so I was hoping maybe he would not take Knights for 2 civil actions, and I was just hoping, also with Malakesh having already Swordsman in hand, that I will still get another shot at taking a copy of Knights, but if I don't get one, then of course that could backfire quite heavily. I draw a card, a colonization card, it's always nice to have. Brightfuture seeds, opens the development of Great Roots. He will go for the masonry, develops it, finishes the Great Wall, is now at 4 strength, takes the reserves, the rich land, plays the Legion tactic, and if he fulfills that Legion, he will be at quite a threatening amount of strength already. Having Great Wall and Colossus. Kharny takes the drama in hand, interestingly, and I mean there is certainly some theater support in the game, but he takes it at quite a bit of a cost, I would say, because he could have, if he wouldn't have taken the drama, gone for a 3rd iron upgrade. Also he skips the knights for it, so there is of course some synergy, and I can understand why he wants to have it in hand, but it feels to me like the price for this may be a bit too big, even though he can at least get out of corruption by building a 3rd warrior. Malakesh seeds and opens the development of planning. The options for the planning are politics, religion, and science. Malakesh takes the free religion, increases his population with the frugality, can again use 2 additional resources from Boudica, builds a swordsman, upgrades 2 more mines. This has now also fully upgraded his iron mines, and then takes the Code of Laws to maybe even go up to 6 civil actions at the next turn. But as you can see, actually no of my opponents has taken the knights, so I was quite happy to see that I can at this turn then get the knights for 1 civil action. I consider to potentially put a scientific breakthrough into the deck, because I soon will be at 4 science income. I still need an H2 government form, but there are some other players who also have some good science income, like Malakesh. Kharny, there's a chance that he will get the alchemy with Leonardo, and also the Rome Roads will soon switch to science income, so he might get a lot of science income as well. And also there's still the Universitas in the game. Malakesh has some iron income, I have some iron income, and I didn't want to push that event before knowing who is the player who gets the Universitas. If I get Universitas, then that might end up being quite a nice event for me to push. I use Gutenberg to upgrade a lab, I take the knights, increase my population, develop the knights, build one, reveal the tactic, making me for now even the strongest. Then I finish the Stonehenge, because the age very well might end before my next turn, and with my last civil action I will take the warfare. I could have also taken a rich land, because at some point I likely want to go into selective breeding, especially with no ocean liner service being in the game. But I have some good resource income, and having the warfare just allows me to go into Republic if I have the chance, without having to worry to have no option at all to fix my military actions. Now it's Brightfuture's turn. He takes the alchemy, so also maybe taking it away from Kharny, but with the masonry I think it might also be just a move without any hate drafting reasoning. He then elects Columbus, as it's the last H1 turn for him, plays the reserves, increases his population, builds a warrior, and even builds another warrior, going up to 10 strength, cementing his position at the strongest, and also potentially being threatening to maybe go for an aggression at the next turn. Kharny takes the knights, he develops them, so again he develops the technology. So while he didn't get any science out of Leonardo for now, at least he got 1 resource per turn, which is somewhat decent. But for now it maybe will take a little while until he has another chance to get his science bonus going. He increases his population, builds a knight, takes the breakthrough, plays the legion tactic, and is actually willing to have corruption here. Could have skipped the breakthrough to increase his population, but the breakthrough of course can be valuable, but it's also of course a bit of a price to just take corruption here. Malakesh goes for Genghis Khan. He has the heavy cavalry tactic, with that he is already one of the 2 strongest, but with upgrading a warrior to swordsman with Boudica's resource, the other one he sadly won't be able to use. He is now already at 9 strength, and then he goes for the Universitas and increases his population to get out of corruption. At the next turn he can finish the Universitas and then improve his already very strong economy even more, going up to 6 science income. He's now at 6 civil actions, and again his position I think continues to be quite nice, and with Genghis Khan he is also one of the 2 strongest now, and also starts to produce a decent amount of culture. Now it's my turn, and at the turn before I just said that I want to wait who is the player to get the Universitas, and then I want to decide if I want to see the scientific breakthrough. And now that Malakesh decided to go for the Universitas, I decided to push that event into the deck. But not of course because he got the Universitas, but because I am quite vulnerable here. I am 4 strength behind Brightfuture. The H2 will start now. Brightfuture gains 3 military card draws with the Colossus. There is a chance that he could have even an H2 aggression in hand now, and if he should try it, and if I don't draw an H1 colonization card, which is something I can't really expect, then that could be an extremely big setback. However, when we take a look at the developments that are left in the deck, there is development of agriculture and settlement. Both of them, or actually no, development of agriculture is not enough to increase my population, but there is development of settlement, which would give me an additional population. There is the development of civil life, which would give me the ability to develop the warfare. So there are 2 out of the 4 developments that would make it that I am able to defend against the aggression. And I was just really hoping that one of those would be revealed, and then I would be safe from an aggression, and just to opening up that possibility to not just be either in danger of an aggression for certain, or having maybe to destroy something in order to avoid the danger of an aggression. Both of those things would be bad, and I wanted to give myself the possibility to maybe be safe from an aggression without having to destroy something. And so I pushed the scientific breakthrough. I at least should end up being in 4 science income, and I was very, very happy to see that I indeed get a bit lucky here and the development of settlement is revealed, giving me an additional population. And with that additional population, after upgrading my second layer with Gutenberg, I can build another knight, and out of the sudden I'm one of the 2 strongest and I'm not in danger of an aggression any longer. So I was very glad and happy that the development of settlement was revealed here. Then I have 5 civil actions, and the question is what to do with them. I could of course just take a bunch of yellow cards, but taking patriotism or reserves for 2 civil actions would feel extremely inefficient. The rich land, who knows when I will be able to use it. The frugality even more, who knows when I will be able to use it. I could take the monarchy. I have at the next turn enough science to develop it, so that could be fine, but taking it for 2 now, when soon there might be H2 government forms available, is also not the greatest. And also I kinda need something to invest into, so even though it really didn't feel ideal, I at the end decided to just go for the St. Peter's Basilica. With Stonehenge and religion, I will then have more than enough happy faces for quite a while. I just have something nice to invest into, and thanks to the St. Peter's Basilica, one of the H2 wonders actually gets a lot stronger for me, because out of the sudden, with having all of those happy faces, the Kremlin could just end up being quite a strong wonder for me, meaning I might, thanks to having the St. Peter's Basilica, later on even more strong options to invest into. And also it's a game, as we said, with some theater synergy, and in those games the St. Peter's Basilica can be quite strong as well, as then those theaters might also just serve as your happy face solution. And speaking of theaters, I consider to just take the drama here as my last civil action, having that card available for Bach, potentially Marlene, Antoni Gaudi. The thing is, I don't have a lot of population now, and I have a strong resource production, so potentially operas would be the better card to get. And also H2 will be starting, and it could just be important to maybe have some civil actions to potentially react to the card draw. And if I build a step already, I now at the next turn could finish the St. Peter's Basilica while still being able to take a card for 3 civil actions, for example if there's an early Conmon or something available. And with that, I think I rather build a step here, even though the drama has quite some potential in this game. I draw a card, Ravages of Time. It's a nice draw because with the St. Peter's Basilica, losing the Stonehenge would cost me 2 happy faces, so similar to losing the, or exactly similar to losing the Hanging Gardens, which is not something that you want to experience. Brightfuture gets a colony with Columbus, and you might maybe already realize that he got a Colossus draws, but now he has only 2 H2 cards in hand, so it looks like he got an H2 colony, and he actually got the autonomous territory, so he managed to win the jackpot here, got an early autonomous territory, will immediately get an additional civil and military action, and he also decided to take 4 additional signs from this territory, and that I think gives him quite a big boost here. There's always a chance if you have the Colossus to get such a nice draw for Columbus, so it can definitely be worthwhile to just take Columbus in hand. He did take him in hand quite early in H1 already, and he gets heavily rewarded here, and I do think, yeah, that really gives him his position quite a big boost here. He builds another warrior, goes up to 12 strength, takes the swordsman in hand, the patriotism, the rich land, and the frugality. Now it's Kharny's turn. He seeds, the development of civil life is revealed, which he uses to actually build a religion. Yeah, he builds a religion for 2 resources, increases his population, builds a knight, maybe soon can go for upgrade for copying the medieval army tactic. He also upgrades the mine. Now it's Malakesh's turn. He finishes the Universitas, develops the cartography, is maybe expecting some colonies, also makes him one of the 2 strongest, and with that scores him 3 culture for Genghis Khan, even though he could have also achieved that with just upgrading a warrior to swordsman, but he isn't willing to do that for now. And then he interestingly takes the strategy, not the conmon, and the strategy is quite strong, and he has some strong science income, so I think it's understandable. Also with Brightfuture's military potential, maybe there's a chance that I would I mean, if he goes for the conman, probably I would take the strategy, but if I don't take it, then there's a chance Brightfuture would get it, and out of the sudden he has some really, really big military potential. So I think it's definitely a solid choice here. But I was, for my part, at least happy to see that I, at my turn, will be able to take the conman for 2 civil actions, as that is really a card that will also improve my position quite nicely with being on 2 military actions and with having a code of laws already. There's also a very early Kremlin, but with it staying on the 2 civil action area, I won't be able to take it because it would cost me 4 civil actions to take it, and then at the end the turn was relatively straightforward. I finish St. Peter's Basilica, I take the Conmon, I can't develop it for now, then I just with my last civil action will take the sufficient upgrade, which I at some point should be able to use to upgrade my farms to selective breeding. And also, there's one decision that I maybe have to make, and that is whether it is worth it for me to just take that printing press with Gutenberg. And at the end, I was willing to take it. It scores me 2 culture. There is at least Anthony Gaudi in the game, so there is maybe a world where I can build a printing press, or maybe I can also build one with Gutenberg. And as soon as I develop the conmon at the next turn, I have hopefully enough hand space to justify taking that printing press. It makes it so that now that the Gremlin is discarded for certain before my next turn, which could make it that I will maybe struggle a little bit to find things to invest into, especially if I invest all of my science into conmon at the next turn. I could even think about a revolution if there's nothing interesting to take, which leaves me with more science. I now can't go for the Gremlin, and those other wonders maybe aren't the greatest ones for me apart from the railroad. I draw some cards, the Wealthy Territory and the Infiltrate. Brightfuture tries a spy against Kharny, but he is able to defend. However, as you can see, Kharny has no cards left in hand, only 2 military actions, so that is somewhat dangerous for him. And Brightfuture will continue increasing his strength, develops the Swordsman, plays the Patriotism, goes for some upgrades, is now already at 14 strength, takes the Selective Breeding, the Cannons, the Efficient upgrade, and upgrades again another Warrior, being at 15 strength now. Kharny will develop the Drama. He develops it with the breakthrough, so he had only 5 science also at the start of the turn, so going into scientific method was not an option for him. However, he will take the scientific method in hand, so that he at the next turn maybe finally can get a big science boost with Leonardo. He copies the medieval army tactic, making him the second strongest, but he will remain with no cards in hand, meaning if Brightfuture has an aggression, he can just play it against Kharny at the next turn. Malakesh cedes and opens the Crusade. Sadly, I'm the weakest at the moment, so I lose 4 culture and Brightfuture gains 4. Malakesh this turn develops the strategy, making it that he remains the second strongest, and interestingly he then goes for the Gremlin, which I think is a fine option for him. He can take it together with the Engineering Genius. He maybe will have struggled a little bit with the Unhappy Face, but he should be able to play around that, and the Gremlin is offering him some nice benefits. If he finishes that and at some point goes for an H2 government form, he will have tons of civil actions around, so that could end up being quite threatening. I still, again, like in the decision before, which I think was also a fine decision for him, but looking at my civilization again, I was happy that he went for the Kremlin, because I was fearing that maybe he could take the railroad away, and the railroad is maybe the one wonder that is left in the game for me that I would be really happy to invest into, because Eiffel Tower with St. Peter's Basilica and having already that many happy faces. I mean, Eiffel Tower and St. Peter's Basilica can be a nice combination, because the Eiffel Tower gives 2 happy faces, but it will take a very long while until I actually need those happy faces in this particular situation. Louvre is the Louvre, and Suez Canal, I don't have any colony for it. I could colonize the Wealthy Territory, but I was very happy to see that he leaves me the railroad, and with that I had a relatively straightforward plan for my next turn. Malakesh also takes the Cavalryman, upgrades the Warrior to Swordsman, is at 14 strength. At my turn, I developed a Conmon, and as I said, when I saw Malakesh not taking the railroad, I thought I had a relatively straightforward turn with going for the railroad, but now there were some other options to consider. Because I could go for the railroad after developing the Conmon, I would have 2 civil actions left. I could just take the Rifleman, but if I take the Rifleman, I first of all miss out on the reserves, which I think in this situation is quite a nice card to have, as the 3 food allows me to get another population out, which might be quite nice. And I also don't take Anthony Gaudi, And with Newton and Nobel appearing, I thought that it is likely that those leaders, if I don't take them, might be taken away. So if I take Railroad and Rifleman, maybe all of those leaders will be gone. Gutenberg at the moment isn't doing that much, so I thought if I go for the Railroad, I rather want to go for reserves and Anthony Gaudi, elect Anthony Gaudi. And it looked still like a very strong turn, but there is also the option of just going for Nobel here, who at the moment is probably doing a lot more for me than Anthony Gaudi. The two strengths would make it that I'm immediately not the weakest any longer, potentially avoiding, potentially I can avoid getting hit by some strength events. And also I get immediately 2 additional science income, which is of course useful, but especially useful with the scientific breakthrough coming that I put into the deck. And if I don't go for Nobel, very likely one of my opponents will go for him. So I really thought about going for Nobel here, and while I then sadly don't have enough civil actions left to go for the Railroad, I can at least take the Rifleman in hand, and then with having 6 science thanks to Nobel at the next turn, I can develop them at the next turn, upgrade them, and then I get strength from Nobel, strength from the Rifleman, and with that I also get a similar amount of strength compared to just finishing the Railroad at the next turn. So that also seemed like an option that I certainly should consider, and there's even another option that I considered, but maybe thought that at the end it's the weakest one of those. I could, before developing the Conmon, take and elect Newton, develop the Conmon with Newton, saving a civil action immediately, and then I actually would have enough civil actions to go for the Railroad, so I would get maybe a leader that is doing more for me right now, and I would get a Railroad. But Newton doesn't give me strength, so I would remain the weakest. He is only giving me 1 science income, so with the scientific breakthrough coming, that's just a bit less value than Nobel would give me at the moment. But nonetheless, Newton could be a solid choice, especially if I don't take Newton. There's a chance that Kharny would get him with the scientific method, which I think would give him quite a big boost. However, if I don't take the Railroad, then there's a chance that maybe Kharny would go for the Railroad, which could give him a nice boost. Maybe Brightfuture could go for the Railroad. Generally, I just think the Railroad is quite strong. But yeah, I really thought that this turn could be a very important one, as it maybe is a decision on what kind of setup do I want to have. Do I want to have the Wonder and Anthony Gaudi, or do I want to have Nobel plus Rifleman? And at the end, I was at some point really leaning into Nobel, but at the end I think the Railroad is just too strong. I remain the weakest for now, but at least I'm not in danger of an aggression, and at the next turn I will get 5 strength from the Railroad, which hopefully means that from that point on I won't be the weakest any longer. I miss out on the Rifleman, but for now I don't have any tactic drawn, so I don't know if I need the Rifleman for the tactics, but still it hurts a bit missing out on them. I could take them, but I do think now that I don't take any of those leaders, as said, those might be taken away, so I want to go for Anthony Gaudi, electing him, getting a bit of culture income, and I take the reserves to get an additional population out, and so that was my choice at the end, but that means that Nobel Newton will now be available for my opponents, and it was a crucial decision, and I'm not sure if I did the right one here. I draw a colonization card, also the international trade agreement, so I was happy about that draw. Brightfuture this turn will go for the selective breeding, upgrades 1 farm to get a bit of food income going. He will go for Nobel, is now at 18 strength even, but as you maybe realized, he didn't play any politics, so he didn't draw an aggression, as that would have been guaranteed against Kharny, and it seems like he also doesn't have any event to seed in hand. He then also takes the reserves. At Kharny's turn, he will indeed go for Newton, elects him, develops the scientific method, goes for 1 upgrade, destroys a lab, builds another knight, is now at 15 strength, so again, at least one of the 2 strongest, but he gets only 1 draw, so he is still very much in danger of an aggression from Brightfuture, and then he takes the Rifleman in hand to be able to go for even more strength soon. So he has now Newton, was able to go for some nice science upgrades, but he also needed to destroy a lab and is quite vulnerable, so I think his position is quite fragile here. He draws 1 card. Now it's Malakesh's turn, he seeds, and I was happy to see that there's no strength event, instead a new deposits, giving me 6 additional resources. Malakesh goes for the organized religion, upgrades it, finishes the Kremlin, is now at 7 civil and 5 military actions without having a government form, so that's quite crazy. And I was quite afraid of the point when he will get a government form in addition to all of those actions. He then builds an additional swordsman, is at 16 strength, still gets the culture from Genghis Khan, and the culture from Genghis Khan makes it that at the moment he is actually having the culture lead. Now it is my turn. I offer the international trade agreement to Kharny. Despite him getting Newton, I still thought his position is probably the weakest. Malakesh has some great stuff going. Brightfuture got the autonomous territory, can soon go into coal very likely. It has the military lead, and so I gave Kharny additional resource production because with having so many resources and soon getting the railroad, I thought that I for myself will need food income more. I still consider taking resources because I don't have knowledge about rats and there's a chance that I might just lose the food, but nonetheless I at the end was willing to take the food. At my turn I thought that I really want to at least take journalisms in hand here because with having that many happy faces and strong resource production, and at least with the reserves getting one more population out, I just felt like, and also of course having Anthony Gaudi, that the journalisms are quite a nice thing to invest into. But first I thought, well, I will take the journalisms, I will finish the railroad, and then maybe I will just play the reserves for food and increase my population to just be very civil action efficient. And I think that would be a fine turn. But then I thought, well, if I already increased my population, maybe there's actually an argument of just instead of finishing the railroad, building a journalism already. Because thanks to having this H2 colonization card drawn, I am safe from an aggression from Brightfuture. If he goes for an aggression, it might more likely be against Kharny, who has only drawn one single H2 card. And so I might just be able to build this journalism, and this journalism might be especially valuable because the scientific breakthrough is coming, so going up to 6 science income might be quite strong. And I thought, well, should I finish the railroad or should I build this journalism? And at the end I thought, well, why not just do both? Which comes at a cost, but I do think it might be the right call here actually, and that is to finish the railroad, develop the journalism, disband the warrior, and then build a journalism. With that I'm at 8 resource income and I'm at 6 science income, so I get both of those things going. I lose the warrior, but I gain the strength of the railroads. I'm stronger compared to when I would have just built the journalism. And of course you might argue, well, this warrior, you will need to rebuild it again soon, but I don't lose any draw by disbanding this warrior, and even if I should just decide to rebuild it at the next turn, then I will again lose no draw, so it just costs me 2 resources, because the population I would have needed to get out anyway. I maybe would have built a journalism at the next turn, I already would have built it this turn, so I will need to get a population out anyway. And then I can just rebuild the warrior. If I will rebuild the warrior, then I basically lose the 2 resources that I would have gained from the railroad. So it would be fine, but it would also then just have been fine to delay the railroad probably. But there is also the chance that maybe I actually draw a new tactic soon, or maybe I'm comfortable staying at 12 strength for a little bit longer, and maybe I draw something like fortifications, mobile artillery, or maybe hussars, and out of the sudden I don't need to rebuild this warrior, and then this play just gets better than when I maybe would have just gone for one of those 2 things. And now I am prepared for the scientific breakthrough, I have the railroad finished, and even if I should have to rebuild this warrior, it doesn't really do much harm to me. And I was happy to see I actually draw the fortifications tactic, so if I should manage to get cannons, maybe I can now just go for cannons, and maybe I don't need to rebuild this warrior. And this time Brightfuture has an aggression available, and that is quite a big setback for Kharny, at least making me more confident in my decision of offering him the pact. But for Kharny that's quite a disaster. He loses a scientific method lab and his theater. Brightfuture gets 6 additional resources, or actually only 5 when we take a look at the log, because of a blue token shortage, and then he is able to go for 2 coal upgrades and also has just a very solid position going here. Kharny interestingly goes for the navigation, develops the navigation, rebuilds the lab, rebuilds the theater, but yeah, rebuilding those costs him 12 resources, 2 civil actions. That's such a big amount of value lost, and despite investing all of those resources, he will still have corruption during his turn. But at least thanks to the navigation, he for the moment is finally safe from any aggressions. But I think that was such a big setback that he now clearly has the weakest position at the moment. He draws 2 cards. Malakesh seeds and opens the scientific breakthrough. All players gain 6 additional science. I was happy to see that I managed to get 6 additional science despite not going for Nobel. So far, I thought my decision of going for Railroad and Antony Gaudi has worked out quite well for me. Malakesh develops the Cavalryman, takes the Architecture in hand, has enough science for it probably, goes for James Watt. Maybe there's a chance that the age already ends and he can use James Watt to go for selective breeding, and then there's always the potential of getting an oil going with James Watt. He copies the medieval army tactic, is now at 17 strength, builds another organized religion, takes the breakthrough. And now it's my turn, and with having drawn the fortifications tactic, I really wanted to secure myself here a copy of cannons. And now, so I take the cannons, and I also kind of need to get stronger. I mean, I won't be able to avoid being weakest this turn anyway, but if I build 1 unit this turn, I can do it for free without missing out on a draw. At least I'm at 15 strength, so there's no danger of maybe multiple aggressions happening, and it's just something that I need to invest into soon anyway. So I built this cannon already, and then I have 2 civil actions left, which I will use to take the opera under patriotism. This turn felt somewhat straightforward for me. The opera with the St. Peter's Basilica, and with all of the theaters not in H3 with Marlene, Chaplin, Fleming, and Hollywood, and also having Antony Gaudi, just there's so much potential for this opera, and then the patriotism is just, yeah, I can't really do much else with the last civil action. I could already develop the opera, but it's a commitment that I'm not willing to make quite yet. I actually, despite it being that late in the age, decided to keep the H1 colonization card in hand, because I felt like if a colony should be revealed before my next turn, if I should be able to win it, that really would be nice to help me transitioning into the fortifications tactic. Bright Future seeds, and there is actually a colony revealed. Sadly, bidding 1 knight and all of my cards, I wasn't willing to bid more, because otherwise I would be in danger of aggressions. It's not enough to win it, and Kharny wins it instead for a knight and a card. Bright Future upgrades his last mines and farms. He has now some very strong production going, has lots of science saved up, is nicely prepared to go into an early H3 government form, and then he takes the team sports. Kharny seeds, and another territory is revealed, and this time I'm actually able to win it for 7, so I was very happy that I kept this H1 colonization card around. I can win it for just a knight, and then of course means that I also draw some new cards now, and one of those cards is the Napoleonic army tactic, and if I should manage to get those riflemen, it could actually be a very valid alternative here to the fortifications. Kharny takes the Republic, both of the commons are gone, the strategy is gone, and I think he needs more civil actions, so despite still staying on 2 military actions, it's maybe a risk that he kinda needs to take. But he is still quite vulnerable, he rebuilds a knight, and with that, at least he's not in danger of an aggression for now. He interestingly also takes the coal. It's not, I mean, Malakesh has James Watt, maybe he could get from iron to coal, but I'm not sure if he would really like to do it. I mean, maybe it's an option with having that many actions and science. So maybe just Kharny wants to deny it, but maybe it didn't have a lot else to do. So maybe it's fine, but maybe also not really necessary. And maybe denying the selective breeding could actually have more of an effect, because both Malakesh and I are kind of waiting for those 2 last copies, and I think denying the selective breeding here, if he wants to go for denial, could actually do more harm to at least one of us. Malakesh seeds, opens the cultural influence, and I was very, very glad to see this. First of all, it just gives me by far the most value, and I get an even bigger culture lead, but also I'm the weakest, so I thought that maybe I will just get hit by a strength event, but instead it's a very positive event for me, so I was very happy to see that. Malakesh gets the copy of selective breeding, upgrades it, goes for some upgrades. He will lose 2 yellow tokens, so he won't have enough food to increase his population at the next turn. He then takes the cannons and the journalisms. He actually disbands the units of swordsmen, builds a cavalryman. With that, he is now the strongest, and he actually is also the player who seeded that H1 event that is on top. And with him now making some effort to be the strongest, I thought there might be a strength event coming. And with that, I didn't want to push for now. And I think it's very important for me that at this turn I get my farm upgrades going. So I go for the selective breeding, develop it, go for an upgrade, go for another upgrade. I could now play the patriotism and maybe start rerouting a warrior onto cannons, going for the fortifications tactic. But there is the rifleman available, I have a decent amount of science, and I have already a knight and a warrior in place, so I think it's just smoother to go for the Napoleonic army tactic. The only downside being that I have to invest 6 science, which is a somewhat significant downside, because with the railroad it could be quite strong to get an early oil, and now I will be missing the science for it. But at least thanks to Anthony Gaudi I actually have enough science to get into computers, for example, if those should be available early. I go for the rifleman and I play the patriotism. It wasn't a clear call, because instead of playing the patriotism I could have also taken the cavalryman, which nicely would have prepared me to threaten something like modern army, but I felt maybe I can just also wait for tanks, and for now I have the Napoleonic army tactic, and playing the patriotism allows me to go for that upgrade, revealing the tactic while not missing out on any draws, so I start to hopefully get quite a bunch of H3 draws going. And with the Napoleonic army, I'm actually the strongest, which I would not be able to achieve with going for the fortifications. And as I said, I kind of expected that there might be a strength event coming, and so I felt like that's even another big argument for the Napoleonic army tactic, that it allows me to already be strong at this turn. I draw some cards, the harmony and competition impacts. I wasn't happy to see that sadly there's a very early military alliance between Brightfuture and Malakesh, which immediately makes it that I'm not the strongest any longer, and Brightfuture this turn will increase his strength, so out of the sudden I'm one of the 2 weakest now. He builds the team sports, goes for cavalryman, is now even at 26 strength, takes the multimedia, which I think is a nice thing for him to invest into. Kharny seeds. And there's actually no strength event, instead the rebellions, but no one gets hit by that. Kharny goes for the rifleman, takes the Manhattan project, so he really wants to make sure here to have some ways to increase his strength, which could end up being important with him having only 2 military actions. He builds a knight, builds a rifleman, but has only 1 H2 card in hand, has actually sent a colonization card away for the inhabited territory, so despite only being 2 strengths behind Brightfuture, he is still quite vulnerable to an aggression, and the military alliance and the 3 additional strengths could actually potentially have quite some bad consequences for Kharny here. He then takes some yellow cards with the reserves and the urban growth. Malakesh seeds and a popularization of science is revealed. I was again happy to see it, that there's no strength event. Popularization of science doesn't really change anything. Malakesh this turn will go for the Republic. He's now at 10 civil actions in H3, so that's quite crazy. Takes the military build-up, takes the United Nations, maybe just as a way to invest the civil actions, and then also takes the frugality. Now it is my turn. And I actually start my turn, I think, by ceding the freedom of movement, with having journalisms and being able to put alchemies there. I thought it should be a decent event. And also I decided to not get stronger this turn. Sadly, the military alliance could potentially make it that I lose some strength events, but I decided to not do something about it this turn, and so I also decided to just put a potentially nice event for me into the deck. The inhabited territory is revealed. I just pass on that. I have no colonization cards, and I wasn't willing to bid too much for that. Kharny at the end is able to wins it for rifleman, but now he is in danger of an aggression for certain, so that could potentially backfire. I start my turn by increasing my population, and when I first thought about this turn, I thought that, well, I have Anthony Gaudi, I can maybe now go for an opera, get quite some big culture income going, and then I get this culture income going, and I just try to stay good prepared for the strength, and then I was hoping that I should have quite a solid position. After building the opera, there's the question, so what to do with my remaining civil actions, and there is actually an early oil available. I have the railroad, and at the next turn I might be able to get into the oil, and it would, even though it's not the earliest oil at this point, then still give me quite a boost. Additionally, if I don't take the oil, and none of the other opponents do, and it makes its way to Malakesh, then I think this oil could completely change his position, because he has 10 civil actions, he has more than enough science, he can easily just take the oil, go for 3 upgrades with James Watt, and out of the sudden he's sitting at 15 resource income and still having lots of science and actions left, and I do think that could end up being a disaster. So I didn't really like this thought of leaving the oil to Malakesh. However, if I take the oil after having gone for the opera, then I don't get a revolutionary idea. And then if I especially also plan on using the oil, would be relatively low in science. Maybe I could struggle to get into something like air forces and military theory, and that could potentially backfire, because Bright Future could maybe get the modern infantry, has the Great Wall, has already had quite a bunch of H3 draws, and I've thought that he actually has quite some big strength potential potentially, and I felt like not taking the revolutionary idea here could in that scenario leave me quite vulnerable. So at some point during my thought process I thought about, well, yes, Malakesh gets the oil, but I just want to play it solidly and make sure that I'm prepared for the military with taking the revolutionary idea. But then I thought again longer about it, and I thought that if Malakesh gets the oil, the game, he is probably in an extremely strong position and might just be very, very hard to win the game against him. Not impossible, but very, very hard. And so I came to the conclusion I kind of have to take the oil. And then I thought, well, do I even have to develop the opera? I also, before some completely other option, I also considered going for the multimedia, building a multimedia, maybe even going for Einstein. But then I again can't take the oil. And at the end, I decided to not develop anything. I take the oil because I think it has some big potential for me, and it would completely change the game for Malakesh. And while there could of course be a second copy revealed, I at least wanted to give myself the chance that Malakesh doesn't get an early oil. There's of course also the chance that maybe one of the opponents would take it away, but it's something that I don't want to count on. And so I take the oil, but instead of investing some science into the opera, even though it's not in much, I instead will just build another journalism. And I mean, I have more than enough happy faces for now anyway. It's quite a bit less culture income, but yeah, I just now hopefully have enough science to go into oil, while also going into air forces, hopefully quickly after. And I, even with not getting even more culture income, am still in a nice position. At the end of Bright Future's turn, we can also take a quick look at the overview. And with that, yeah, I just felt like that's just the best solution. And I, at the end, thought, well, maybe I could have gotten this idea a little bit earlier. But at the end, that was just a turn that I was extremely happy about, securing the oil and still having hopefully also enough science for it. Then I have 2 civil actions left, and I decide to take the efficient upgrade, which saves me 4 resources when going into the oil, and also the multimedia, because one of the leaders that I might be getting could be a Fleming, and if I get into oil and get either Fleming or George Chaplin and maybe the Hollywood, that could have some really big potential for me. I again draw some cards, this time some more seedable impacts with wonders in agriculture. Bright Future Seeds, it seems like he doesn't have an aggression, because that one would have been guaranteed against Kharny. Instead, the Independence Declaration is revealed, so Kharny will have to lose a colony. Bright Future has enough science to go into democracy, so that gives him quite a nice boost. He goes for Einstein, goes for modern infantry, increases his population, builds a cavalryman, and with that is now even at 29 strength. And when we now take a look at the overview at the end of Bright Future's turn, I was somewhat happy about my position. There's still a chance that a second copy of oil drops, and that I think might put Malakesh into the best position. But if that doesn't happen, then I felt like my position is quite fine. I have the culture lead, I produce the most culture, my economy is completely solid, I have a decent tactic. If I don't get air forces, things could still end up being tricky. But there's a chance that I will just get the air forces, and so I was somewhat happy, or quite happy about my position. Then there's Malakesh, who has all of those civil actions, and with that definitely also has a strong position, has also already secured him a wonder, can also go for cannons and then maybe copy the Napoleonic army tactic to be at a decent amount of strength. And if he still gets oil in time, he has the potential to get even stronger. So here I thought might be my biggest contender, especially because he is also the closest one in culture. However, Bright Future's position is also not bad. He has some solid economical numbers here, has now the democracy, so lots of actions, and soon can go into Einstein plus multimedia, which allows him to maybe score quite a bunch of points. But he is more behind in culture, and overcoming that big amount of gap, with me having also a solid economy, I think could end up being challenging for him. And Kharny, I think, still has by far the weakest position, is still extremely vulnerable for the military, has no clear way how he can produce a lot of culture, and I think for him it will be quite challenging to not lose this game. But definitely still possible. And Marlene Dietrich might here be quite a helpful leader for him. He builds some more units, elects Marlene, being at 28 strength, having only one card in hand, but also only being one strength behind Bright Future, taking the patriotism and the air forces, so really makes sure to defend himself. Now it's Malakesh's turn. He seeds the terrorism is revealed, so sadly Bright Future will be able to destroy some buildings. And Malakesh doesn't get a second copy of oil. He also doesn't get a copy of computers. Then he maybe would have been able to go for Bill Gates. So I was happy to see that. Maybe a bit unfortunate for him here. And so instead he actually decides to, this turn, first of all, build some military. Even costing him some draws, but also making it that he is by far the strongest now. He builds a step of the United Nations to get out of corruption, takes the revolutionary idea, Chaplin, efficient upgrade, elects Chaplin and goes for the movie. So he is making Chaplin his new leader, interestingly. Could have maybe still gone for Bill Gates, gets 2 additional resource production immediately and has the potential to go into computers. But it instead decides to go for Chaplin, which I found interesting, because he could have kept James Watt and maybe would have been still open to either on oil or mechanized agriculture, even though, of course, at the next turn it would already be quite late. But it could still be a nice option, and with that, I somewhat took that as a hint towards 2 potential events, and I kind of thought that maybe an iconoclasm might be coming, because Kharny went for a new leader, Malakesh has Chaplin in hand, has elected Chaplin now, Bright Future has Einstein at least in hand, so I thought there might be an iconoclasm coming, and maybe even Malakesh has seeded that iconoclasm, which also would make sense with James Watt, and then that would make sense why he elects Chaplin now, so that he doesn't lose a civil action when the iconoclasm would be revealed. So I kind of thought that an iconoclasm might be coming, which I didn't like too much, because Anthony Gaudi is still a very solid leader for me at the moment. But the other event that electing Chaplin could be a hint towards could also be the prosperity. It would only be 2 additional food, but maybe that could be reason enough to just elect Chaplin already. At my turn, I, despite being the weakest, decided to push, as I want to use my opportunities to get some impacts in there. I push the impact of agriculture. There's a chance that it might still be revealed in age 3, in which case I even get a +1 food income from the International Trade Agreement Pact. And there is indeed a prosperity, so that very likely was the reason for Malakesh to elect Chaplin already. This turn I increase my population. I certainly take the air forces, because I think I am in a good position. Malakesh didn't get the oil, and I do think I just from now on should maybe play it relatively conservatively and just really make sure that I am safe from any military stuff. Nonetheless, I kind of wanted to get into oil, and I thought about just taking the air forces, developing the oil, going for an upgrade, and then maybe increasing my population, potentially building some units. But even if I build a cannon and a rifleman, I'm at 28 strength and I'm not able to defend against an aggression from Malakesh. So again, the military alliance being a bit annoying. If I would be able to defend against an aggression, I would have gone for the oil first here. And I still considered going for the oil, but Malakesh is my biggest contender. If he maybe doesn't have anything else to do, he might very well try an aggression against me, and if then my biggest contender gets a successful aggression against me, it would have been, or it could be quite a big swing. And with that, I decided, with me considering my position as quite strong, to just play it safe, play it conservatively, and develop the air forces, build a cannon to get out of corruption, with that being completely safe from aggressions, also being prepared for strength events, because again, Malakesh did put some effort to get stronger, to get strongest, and with that I thought, with him having seeded up 2 of those events, that there very well might be some strength events coming, so not only am I safe from an aggression, but also better prepared for those strength events. And then with my last civil action I just take the military theory, also denying it from Bright Future, so that it's a bit harder for him to set up any military stuff. I draw 2 cards, sadly no more impacts. Bright Future elects Einstein, develops the multimedia, and with building 1 he gets a very big science boost. He then takes the last copy of Air Forces, meaning Malakesh is the player who missed out on those Air Forces, which I was happy to see, as Malakesh probably is the strongest contender in this game. Bright Future reveals the classic army tactic, and with that is at least not the weakest. Kharny further makes sure to get some more strength going. After losing the lab to the terrorism from Bright Future, he is at 0 science income anyway, so if that is the case, then of course the -2 science from fundamentalism isn't really a downside. And he gets now more military actions, is at 34 strength, increases his population, takes the reserves, builds another drama with the urban growth, going up to 12 culture income, upgrades a warrior to rifleman, and is now at 36 strength, so isn't the weakest any longer. And finally, he will also get his first H3 draws in all of the turns before he used all of his military actions, but now he finally gets his first draws from H3. Malakesh seeds an H2 event into the deck, interestingly. The freedom of movement is revealed, which was seeded by me. Malakesh doesn't find a way to use that event, does nothing with it, develops the architecture, plays the revolutionary idea, develops the movies, immediately scores a Nobel Prize, builds a movie, gets some big culture income with Chaplin, takes the engineering genius, the reserves, the modern infantry, and increases his population. And he gets quite some culture income going now, but it's also a bit of a greedy turn, because he has now 10 resources available for the military, which is enough to go for another army, but Kharny has some potential, Bright Future probably not, but I also have some potential. I have no war in hand, but if I would have one, I could develop the military theory, build a knight, a rifleman, an air force, even use the freedom of movement to put one of my mines, for example, into a military unit to make building all of those units more easily possible for me. So if I have a war, I think I can declare it now against Malakesh, especially with the freedom of movement being out now. And Kharny might be able to go for war as well. So Malakesh playing it a bit greedily, but if he gets out of this unpunished, and Kharny at least has only drawn 3 H3 cards, then of course the culture push that he is getting right now might also potentially maybe win him the game. So he is taking some risks here, but that might very well get rewarded, and I was unhappy to see that I sadly don't have any war available, so I won't be able to punish him, and Kharny has only those 3 cards drawn, so I was a bit unhappy to see it even, because I sadly won't be able to punish him for that. Instead, I seed the impact of wonders into the deck. The Cold War is revealed, so I gained some additional science, which I was very happy to see. I developed the oil this turn, it's late, yes. I could also just build an opera, but I can upgrade it so cheaply with the efficient upgrade that despite me having only 2 productions left, it still gives me quite a bunch of additional resources, which allows me maybe to prepare better for impacts, and in general I stay more flexible. I want to have a lot of resources saved up so that I am safe from Kharny in case he maybe has a war drawn, and then I can just go for an upgrade, going up to 14 resource income, and with my remaining civil actions I just take the fast food chains. I don't get the Hollywood. I was still thinking about maybe Fleming, Hollywood, but the thing is, if I don't develop the opera this turn, then I don't know if I get movies, and then it's just, and I also, of course, when I go for the oil upgrade, just don't have the civil actions, so the fast food chains just seemed like the lot better option here. And then I build a rifleman to even be the strongest. Not sure if I really need to do this, because maybe it prevents me from doing some other investments. But on the other hand, as said, I kind of thought there might be some more strength events coming. If I win something like Refugees or Politics of Strength, that could really have quite an impact. So at the end, I was willing to build a Rifleman. I draw sadly no new impacts, but now I have a war in hand. Bright Future seeds and opens the developed territory. And here I'm really not sure if I should have actually bid for this developed territory, to be honest. Because losing my unit, first of all, makes it that I'm not the strongest any longer. It makes it harder to go for a potential war. I mean, the 5 science might help me to go for Nobel Prizes. The yellow tokens could still be useful to not struggle too much with unhappy faces. So it's not bad. Also, I thought that there are 2 other players who have exactly 1 colony and one with 0 colonies. I thought it's not impossible or not that unlikely that maybe an impact of colonies has been put into the deck. And with that, I at the end was willing to bid for it, but maybe at the end I should just keep my unit here. But I am able to win it actually for Rifleman. Bright Future uses the freedom of movement to put a worker from Alchemy to Cavalryman. Wait, did I use the freedom of movement? I used the freedom of movement to put an Alchemy to Journalism. Yes, that of course makes sense. I still have only 2 journalisms because Bright Future destroyed one with terrorism. He takes some cards here, builds a Cavalryman, goes for the Modern Infantry and an upgrade. Kharny declares a war against Malakesh, so he got a bit lucky and has actually a war drawn, which is a bit unfortunate for Malakesh. And now Kharny can go for the Patriotism, place the reserves, place another copy of reserves, can finish the Manhattan Project for 0 culture, but the 13 strength are relevant here. He copies the classic army tactic, he has 1 military action left to build a Rifleman, that puts him at 65 strength, so that's quite a respectable number, and Malakesh can't reach that amount of strength. He instead will build a cannon, builds a cavalryman, takes another copy of reserves, urban growth, computers, oil, and then sadly the age ends, meaning that I won't get any new draws during my turn. Malakesh is now at 52 strength. He can at least build a little bit more stuff. And with having sent the unit away, it is quite costly for me to go for a lot of destruction and declare the war. And depending on what events are in there, it could even backfire quite heavily. So I decided to not try anything with any war here, and instead just play, continue the game peacefully, especially because Malakesh got now already punished for his greediness by Kharny declaring the war. And yeah, I decided to not push because at the moment I'm the weakest, I will get stronger, and it's unlikely that both of those impacts will be fine for me to push, so I just decided to not push at all. I will go for Flaming. I could now just take the movies, increase my population, build a movie, but then I'm quite in danger of potentially even a double aggression from both Kharny and Malakesh. I could get plundered, I have one of them in hand, but there was a second copy, I could get raided. If I get plundered, I can't finish my wonder, so of course it gives me a big culture buff, but I just thought it is too risky. I thought about just going for tanks and mechanized army. It would make me safe from an aggression from Malakesh, but not from Kharny, but I would have so many resources available that even if I get plundered, I still can finish the fast food chains. But at the end, I felt like I should, again, now with Malakesh, luckily for me, getting punished for playing it a bit greedily, I want to just play it conservatively, and I just want to make myself safe from any aggression. So I increased my population twice, built a knight, a rifleman, developed a military theory, and then I am at 54 strength, and I actually have just enough cards in hand to defend against an aggression from Kharny. And even if he plays an aggression and I have to use all of my cards, I am stronger than Malakesh, so I hopefully won't get hit by any aggressions here. Now I have 2 civil actions left. I can't really build anything, but what I can do is to take and develop the rockets, which makes it that I score a Nobel Prize this turn, because if I don't do this, then I don't have enough science to score a Nobel Prize at the next turn. I thought about just taking something like satellites for potential impact of progress or engineering, but yeah, then I don't get the Nobel Prize. And so at the end I decided to just take and develop the rockets. It's not the turn that scores me the most points, but it scores me a decent amount of points, and it just makes me safe from an aggression, and I was hoping that with Malakesh getting hit by the war, I should be in a solid position. Brightfuture seeds and opens the politics of strength, so my senses this time were correct, and there were indeed some strength events in the deck, so at least I don't get hit by that. Brightfuture plays the revolutionary idea, develops the military theory, takes the civil service for 3, takes the movies, the engineering, and taking all of those cards somewhat indicates that maybe he has an impact of progress drawn. He also builds the swordsman, going up to 57 strength. Kharny steals 18 culture from Malakesh. He increases his population, builds a 4th drama thanks to the fundamentalism. He has the urban building limit to do it, builds a religion, is now at 15 culture income, then takes the satellites and the professional sports. Malakesh doesn't see it, which maybe indicates that he doesn't have any impact in hand, or maybe he has one that he wants to evaluate with, or any seedable impact for him in hand, or he has one that he wants to evaluate with the United Nations. He builds a movie, finishes the United Nations for 16 points, and then he has actually an impact, the impact of culture, which is quite a strong one for him, gaining 10 points on me, 15 on Brightfuture. Brightfuture, of course, it's quite a bad impact for him, and he's falling behind quite a bit in culture. And yeah, so that's quite a strong impact. I was wondering why he decided to evaluate it and not push it to get a 3 culture for pushing, but of course there might be an impact reveal that he might potentially would improve, but the main reason probably is that there's maybe the danger that he could get hit by an aggression, depending on how many defense cards he has, and maybe get raided, which then would cost him a lot of points. So it's maybe safer to evaluate it now with the United Nations. However, maybe it could be worth the risk for him to also cede it and just take the danger of an aggression. But it's a bit of a decision of risk management here. And he could get punished if he just puts it into the deck. He also scores a Nobel Prize, upgrades to computers, which I was not too happy to see, because it's likely that Brightfuture, and he has actually pushed one of those impacts here, has ceded the impact of science, and now Malakesh overtakes me in science income, makes it actually quite hard for me to overtake him again. I would need to build an alchemy, which is, apart from securing the impact of science, not really the greatest thing for me to do. Now it's my turn. I pushed the impact of harmony, as you can see, and I also took a look at Brightfuture's turn. Mainly to check, also, of course, for his impacts, but also to check if he has an aggression and whether I can maybe safely delete some units here. And he has some interesting cards in hand. He has an aggression. I think it was the armed intervention. Maybe it was also another aggression, but I think an armed intervention. So an aggression that would be quite painful to get hit by. But he also has strong impacts. Impact of strength, which he maybe can make work for him, and also impact of progress. And I thought that he maybe will end up ceding impact of progress, because for him, with being now quite a bit behind in points, the player that he maybe has the best chances to catch up to is Kharny. And Kharny, I mean, he has at least a 10 progress actually with those 2 techs, but still not the biggest one. And against him, the impact of progress is better than the impact of strength, because even if it overtakes him in strength, it's only +5 against Kharny. So he has strong impacts, and with that, I felt like if I delete some units here, and even if I actually can't defend against an aggression, Brightfuture doesn't know it, and with having good impacts, I thought it's very, very unlikely that he would take the risk, especially with having such a strong impact against Kharny, who is probably his biggest contender. As I feared, there is an impact of science in the deck, which Malakesh gets now more points out of than I do, and as you can see at the moment, he is in the lead before me. It's a great impact for Brightfuture, catching up 15 points to Kharny. I disband a knight, build an additional farm. I got a bit lucky that the impact of agriculture wasn't the impact that was revealed, so that I can get +1 point now. After building the farm, I can then finish the fast food chains. So the farm also gives me an additional point for the fast food chains. And after having finished the fast food chains, I can then destroy a mine and build a religion, making it that I have 1 additional culture income, getting 2 additional happy faces for a potential impact of happiness, and also being prepared for the impact of harmony that I put into the deck. So I think that was probably the right turn to play, and also the right sequence, with for a moment having a bigger fast food chains than at the end of the game. And yeah, so that should be fine. Now I was hoping that Brightfuture wouldn't go for the aggression and seeding and rather going for seeding an impact. And that's indeed what he will do. He seeds, the impact of agriculture is revealed, which is now plus 11 for me instead of plus 10. So I gain 1 point against Malakesh. And then Brightfuture develops the civil service, maybe an indicator that he put impact of progress in, which is what I expected from him anyway. And disbanding those units is a very big indicator they put impact of progress in. He also builds an additional farm, which makes his impact of balance quite big. And then before the final impacts, we can see that I have an 18 points lead before Malakesh. My two impacts in there are actually completely equal for me and Malakesh, so then it will depend on the other impacts, but with having an 18 points lead and at least being reasonably well prepared for most of the impacts, I was hoping that I will be able to keep my lead. Brightfuture and Kharny are quite a bit behind, and Brightfuture is actually 10 points behind Kharny. However, he is probably quite a bit better prepared for impacts than Kharny, and it might end up being hard for Kharny to keep the lead before Brightfuture, but let's see if he will be able to do it. And the first impact is the impact of government, which is actually giving Malakesh some additional points. He is now only 14 points behind me, and it's quite a strong one for Brightfuture, who has gotten the autonomous territory and now also lots of actions from other sources. He already has catched up to Kharny now. There's the impact of balance, which is the same for me and for Malakesh, and plus 18 for Brightfuture against Kharny, so Kharny very quickly falling behind here. Then there's the impact of wonders, which I seeded. It's the same for me in Malakesh, and Brightfuture gains some points again against Kharny. There's the impact of harmony, which again was seeded by me. The same for me in Malakesh. Brightfuture actually is at 24 harmony now, so he catches up some points to me in Malakesh, but is still probably too much behind to catch up, and but has now a big enough lead before Kharny. There's now only one impact left. You might actually know which one it is. It's the impact of progress, which I've seen with Flaming. That's actually a good one for Malakesh, but not good enough to catch up to me. Malakesh is staying 10 points behind me, but is staying in front of Brightfuture, who managed to get quite ahead of Kharny in the final impacts. Now, so at the end, I'm able to win this game, which I'm of course happy about. A nice start for me. However, if Kharny wouldn't have drawn that war and wouldn't have executed it, then it very well might have been that Malakesh could have been the winner of this game, because he lost now quite some points from the war. I think about 20 or maybe a little bit less, and now he's only 10 points behind me, and the war of course also disrupted him a little bit. Of course, we never know what would have happened. I played at the end very conservatively. Maybe I could have taken a bit more risks, but those risks of course could have also gotten punished. And then maybe Malakesh would have been the winner. So Kharny, first of all, being able to stabilize, because he was very, very vulnerable for quite a long time in H2 and at the beginning of H3, but he really put a lot of effort into staying somewhat safe and at the end even becoming an aggressor himself, and that at the end was also quite important for me. Malakesh also got a bit unlucky with missing out the air forces, so at the end he got hit by that war, which potentially might have cost him the win at the end. He, I think, had quite a strong position throughout the game, got quite a strong start in the early game, played it quite well, made good use out of the cards that he managed to get, and had quite a strong position. I think it was very important that I denied him the early oil. If he would have gotten that with James Watt, that would have been extremely strong for him. He also sadly didn't get computers with Bill Gates, so in some situations maybe got a bit unlucky, but generally, at least at the beginning, managed to get some strong cards going for him and had a strong position, but then got hit by the war, maybe took a bit too much of a risk. But if he would have not taken the risk of going for this movie and missed out on 8 culture income, then maybe he wouldn't have gotten hit by the war. Maybe he wouldn't have gotten hit anyway. But even if he, because of that, doesn't get hit by the war, maybe then with not having played it greedily, I might be able to win, because then maybe he would be missing the points, potentially at least. So I still think it was maybe a reasonable risk, even though I, of course, also might have been able to wall him. So that was somewhat risky. And yeah, but at the end, I'm just happy that I was able to win this first game. It's the first game, so we don't need to take a look at the standings. And the second 4-player game is still ongoing. I have some busy days ahead of me, so you shouldn't expect a video before next week. But by then, hopefully the second game will be finished, and hopefully we will then take a look at that game. Alright, then I hope you're excited for the rest of the stage. I hope that I will be able to make it into stage 6 this year, and that you can maybe again get some coverage of that stage then. And yeah, alright, then I say thanks for watching, have a nice time, and see you in the next video.